Hey everyone. So, if you've ever wondered why some folks just relentlessly grow and actively embrace challenges, while others kind of hit a wall and stagnate the second they make a mistake, well, the answer actually boils down to one fundamental concept. Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the absolutely groundbreaking science behind Carol S. Dweck's mindset, the new psychology of success. And look, this isn't just your typical motivational fluff. We're talking deeply researched science that literally dictates the entire trajectory of our lives, our careers, and even our relationships. We're going to explore how our underlying thinking patterns completely determine our ultimate success, and, more importantly, how we can actually change them. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to really think about this for a second. Have you ever given up after a minor failure? I mean, you try something totally new, you realize you weren't immediately amazing at it, and you just walk away. Or maybe you faced a tiny setback and let it convince you that, hey, you just weren't cut out for the job. It's an incredibly relatable human experience, right? We have all been there for sure. But what we're going to discover today is that this reaction, it isn't some permanent character flaw. It's not a hardwired limitation. It's actually just a symptom of a very specific way of thinking.
To really wrap our heads around this, we have to confront a massive societal myth. It's the idea that raw talent and innate intelligence are the absolute genetic keys to achievement. Think about it. From a very young age, society feeds us this exact narrative. We look at a math whiz or a brilliant artist and we just assume, oh, they were simply born with a gift. But is it really that simple? Is success just some genetic lottery that you either win or lose the minute you're born?
Comparing that belief to reality brilliantly illustrates the exact flaw in that myth. Society treats intelligence like a crown, like you're either born a genius or you aren't. But if that were true, every naturally talented person out there would be wildly successful. Yet reality constantly shows us the opposite. I mean, we all know highly intelligent people who just never quite reach their potential. Scientific reality shows us that the brain is actually much more like a seed. Success relies on watering it with mindset, effort, and continuous learning. Sure, talent might give you a slight starting advantage, but it is absolutely not the finish line.
Which brings us right to Dr. Dweck's core discovery, the ultimate clash between two primary mental frameworks. We're talking about the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. And listen, these aren't just passing thoughts or temporary moods. No, these are deeply ingrained foundational structures that dictate how we react to absolutely everything in our lives, from a super stressful project at work all the way to a complicated disagreement with a loved one.
Here's how it plays out. When a fixed mindset hits an obstacle, it looks exactly like a brick wall. Because folks with this mindset believe abilities and intelligence are completely static, hitting a roadblock means they simply aren't good enough. To them, effort is seen as a sign of weakness, and failure becomes a permanent brand on their identity. Because of this, they intensely avoid challenges. But flip the script to a growth mindset, and those exact same bricks turn into stairs. They believe abilities absolutely develop through strategy and hard work. Because they understand this, they actively embrace challenges. They view failure not as a permanent label, but as a totally necessary stepping stone and an incredible opportunity to learn. So where do these mindsets actually come from? Well, they are deeply shaped during childhood. Think about this. When we hand a child a metaphorical crown and say, "Wow, you are so smart," we actually plant the fragile seeds of a fixed mindset. We accidentally teach them that their worth is tied to looking naturally gifted without even trying. But when we hand them a wrench and praise the effort, saying, "Wow, you worked so hard on that," we build the resilient foundation for a growth mindset. We literally prove to them that hard work ultimately beats raw talent. There is a fascinating scientific study that illustrates this perfectly. Researchers gave two groups of kids puzzles to solve. Group 1 was praised purely for their intelligence. They were repeatedly told they were smart. The other group was praised for their effort. They were told they worked hard. Now, when both groups were later given a much harder set of puzzles, the results were just staggering. The smart group quickly gave up. They were absolutely terrified that struggling with a difficult puzzle would ruin their genius label. The hard-working group, however, showed incredible persistence and resilience. They didn't feel judged by the difficulty, they just saw a challenge requiring a new strategy. Praising intelligence creates a fragile ego, but praising effort, that builds unstoppable resilience. For a perfect real-world example of this, let's look at Michael Jordan. We often view him as this untouchable basketball deity who was just born to fly, right? But early on, he was handed a clipboard with a giant red X. He was actually cut from his high school varsity basketball team. He simply wasn't deemed good enough at the time. Now, a fixed mindset would have completely internalized that massive rejection, concluded the talent just wasn't there, and quit forever.
But armed with a growth mindset, Jordan instead used that failure to fuel a legendary practice routine. He worked tirelessly on his flaws, proving that continuous, relentless effort is what truly builds greatness.
But here's the thing, these mindsets don't just stay confined to a basketball court or a middle school classroom. Not at all. They ripple outward, deeply infiltrating every single major area of our professional and personal lives. The way we perceive our own potential fundamentally alters how we show up in the world, every single day.
The impact is truly universal. Sports champions use a growth mindset to process agonizing defeats and come back stronger. Business leaders use it to constantly adapt in a shifting market. Think of Steve Jobs. He was famously fired from Apple, the very company he founded. A fixed mindset leader would have just hidden away, totally crushed by the public rejection and criticism. But Jobs used that massive failure to learn, adapt, and return as a vastly stronger, more innovative leader. So the crucial point is this: your mindset essentially dictates your absolute ceiling in any given field.
It even transforms how we love. A fixed mindset assumes a relationship should just magically work like a fairy tale, treating any conflict or argument as a doomed failure. Like, if it's hard, it must not be meant to be. A growth mindset, however, recognizes that true, strong relationships require both people actively trying to make each other better. It understands that a solid bond requires communication and a shared desire to help each other grow. In this light, conflict isn't an instant deal breaker. It's actually a vital opportunity for mutual understanding.
Now, for what is arguably the most empowering realization of this entire explainer, if you've recognized a fixed mindset in yourself today while listening to this, do not panic. The established scientific fact is that our mindsets are highly flexible. You are not stuck with the brain you have right now. You can intentionally, deliberately rewire your thinking. How amazing is that?
Now, what's really interesting about this is the hard science backing it up. This is all driven by neuroplasticity, which is the brain's proven ability to physically form new neural connections when we learn, practice, and put in effort. Your brain isn't just a static piece of hardware. It's a dynamic, highly adaptable organ. When you tackle a new challenge, struggle through it, and refuse to give up, you are literally, physically, restructuring the architecture of your mind.
So how do we actually make this shift when that intense doubt creeps in? Well, first, you have to recognize the fixed mindset voice. That's your inner critic saying, "I can't do this," or "if I try, people will laugh at me." Second, challenge it. Talk back to that voice and say, "Okay, I can't do this yet, but I can learn." That word "yet" is incredibly powerful. And third, take action. The only way to silence the inner critic completely is to step into the arena, embrace the challenge, and put in the deliberate effort required to grow. Of course, doing this completely alone is tough. So you have to actively curate your environment. You want to consciously surround yourself with growth-minded people, folks who celebrate learning and effort way more than natural talent. Foster an atmosphere of continuous education in your workplace and in your home. And above all, break out of the box of negative labels you might have placed on yourself. The people around you and the environment you build will either feed your fixed mindset or they'll nurture your growth. We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today, and I want to leave you with one final direct thought. Next time you face a challenge, will you give up or will you learn? You now know that your abilities aren't fixed. You have the raw power of neuroplasticity and the practical tools to rewrite your internal dialogue. The choice is entirely yours. Choose growth. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.